Okay, sorry for that last video stopping really abruptly. I guess I ran out of some space on my hard drive, so I think I took care of that, and hopefully we should be good for the rest of this lecture. Um, okay, so we were just finishing talking about 16th note stickings in context. In 16th note context. Okay, so we went through all those examples in the middle of this right-hand lead system paragraph. And yes, we'll start looking, I think, when I get back on Thursday at some more examples, some more sort of practical rhythmic examples, like what snare drum music sort of actually looks like in context, so we can see how we would apply this, and we'll practice some of those things. Okay, so moving on. Let's talk a bit about dynamics. Okay, and obviously I know you guys all understand dynamics and what fortissimo is versus pianissimo versus in between. But the reason I'm talking about them specifically is how it relates to our technique and where and how we're hitting the drum, the snare drum, but also other percussion items or percussion instruments. So one thing that I think is pretty much true for most of our common percussion instruments. It gets a little tricky with some of the auxiliary stuff, but stick height is going to be directly related to volume. Okay, and on the one hand, that's not true, because what actually determines volume when we're playing, let's just say, a snare drum, since that's the unit we're in, is the velocity of the stick. Okay, so velocity is speed and direction. Okay, so the faster I move my stick toward the drum, the louder it's going to be. This is true. However, for the most part, the way we talk about dynamics in drumming is stick height, because it's a really useful way to sort of standardize what we're doing. And also, practically speaking, for most people, it's actually much easier to think about their stick speed in relation to stick height. Okay, so I just want to make sure you understand the difference between velocity versus stick height. But with that said, we're pretty much going to talk about dynamics relating to stick height for the most part. So generally speaking, as you might imagine, the closer you are to the drum, the quieter you're going to play. The further away from the drum, the louder it's going to be. So we'll talk about specific stick heights in just a second, but the other thing you need to be aware of, and this is going to be a little bit tricky to show on a video, and we'll talk more about it when I get back. The drum or the pad is a circle, right? Well, a lot of our pads are some kind of like hexagon or octagon or however many, decagon, I don't know. But you get the idea. It's basically a circle, right? And one thing we need to keep in mind is that we're not actually playing this whole circle. For a pad, it doesn't necessarily matter so much because it's sort of just a tool to practice. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out the best way to show this. But when we're dealing with like a snare drum, we're really only going to be playing in a small portion of the drum, and it's sort of this portion. Okay, that was a bad way to show it. Really, I'm having a hard time. Okay, the way I think about it is there's essentially a relatively thin rectangle that runs from the rim to the center of the drum. Okay, this is very trippy because it's mirrored. From the rim to the center of the drum. And that really is our playing zone on the snare drum. And where we're at in there is going to determine dynamics. Again, if that's a little bit confusing, where that rectangle is, we'll talk about it more when I get back. But essentially from the rim to the center of the drum, there's about that much space running in a rectangle where I'd be playing. And it's the rectangle is from the center of the drum to the rim, away from your body, not the one that's closer to your body. Okay, so basically all the other parts of the drum, for the most part, we're not really playing. except for in maybe some kind of special circumstance or extended technique situation. But for all basic playing, we want to be in that zone. Okay? And generally speaking, quieter is closer to the rim, and louder is closer to the center. So it's very, very rare that we would actually play in the very center of the drum. Okay. The only times I'm playing really in the very center of the drum is when it's very loud, like fortissimo, and especially playing in a middle school or high school band situation. It's pretty rare that you're going to need to play that loud. So for the most part, I actually encourage you to not have your students play in the very, very center of the drum. Even when they're playing forte, they should be playing a little bit closer, a bit off center, closer towards the rim. Okay. Let's try me standing up. Maybe that'll be a bit easier. Thanks for being patient with me. I make this silly video. Okay. So in general, I'm thinking about being closer to the rim, being pianissimo, being maybe an inch away, being mezzo piano, being a couple of inches away, being mezzo forte, and being not quite to the center, but maybe 2/3 of the way there, being forte. Again, very center of the drum is almost only reserved for playing fortissimo. Okay, so now I'm talking about playing zones, or I have been talking about playing zones, but let's also now connect those to stick height, okay, because they're actually interrelated. Just adjust this a tiny bit. Okay, so if I need to play piano, or pianissimo, I really want a small stick height of maybe just an inch or two. Okay? If it's 3 P's, pianissimo, I'm really just as close to the drum as I can get. If I'm dealing with the mezzo forte situation, mezzo piano situation, I might be a couple inches off the drum. Maybe this is 2 to 3 inches. If I'm dealing with mezzo forte, it gets bigger, maybe we'll say like a 4-inch, 5-inch stick height. It gets bigger at forte, maybe a 6 or 7-inch stick height. And then we reserve sort of the really loud big stick height, 8, 9, 10-inch for fortissimo and fortissimo. Okay. One thing to keep in mind is it depends a little bit on the context. Okay. So in a marching band context or outside rudimental snare drum playing context, these stick heights might be a little bit bigger. Okay, but in sort of an inside, we're playing snare drum and concert band wind ensemble situation, these stick heights might even be a little bit lower. And they're also going to be different if we're playing on a different instrument. Okay, but generally, those are the stick heights we're going to use. Okay, so stick height and where you place the stick on the drum is going to directly determine the dynamic we're playing. So, for example, pretty much never going to play pianissimo in the center of the drum. Okay, so you could use a very small stick height and play in the center of the drum, and it would be quieter. But sound-wise, it's not the greatest thing to do, and it's also just very hard to play that quietly in the center of the drum. Conversely, we wouldn't really ever play huge stick heights at the very edge of the drum. Okay, we don't want to use a 9-inch, 10-inch stick height and play at the very edge of the drum by the rim, because it's going to get a different sort of thinner sound. That thinner sound is fine when we're trying to play a piano dynamic, because the way the drum responds is a little bit different. But it doesn't make sense for us to use a big 10-inch stick height an inch away from the rim. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that for today. So, sorry this is in 2 videos, but I tried to keep it pretty quick. And I'll see you all soon, and we'll talk more about all of these concepts in person and keep going with snare drum. Be on the lookout on Blackboard for other handouts and assignments in the next couple days. Okay, thanks.